Evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. We're here live with co-working, and we are so excited that you're here to join us. We are today in our legacy mode because we know that on Tuesdays we talk about legacy and legacy building, legacy planning, and today we're going to jump headlong into um, just really working through the concept of building legacy, building out the legacy that you want and need your family to experience. And so, with that said, we are just really excited that you have taken the time to join us and taken the time to really deep dive with us into this area. Um, I want to make sure that you guys are hearing me okay because for whatever reason, I can't really hear what's going on over there, but I just want to make sure that I'm live and the studio audience can hear me. So, with that said, if you guys can give me a thumbs up if you can hear, we really would appreciate that and make sure that we, are loud enough and everything is going well. Okay, we can be heard. Wonderful. Okay, well, let's jump in today with our concept of building legacy. And so, the roadmap to building legacy, a lot of you have from time to time heard me talk about this. And, ad infinitum, I probably felt like a broken record to many people as I'm sharing about this concept of building legacy. But I really want you to be able to understand how very important it is for you to make sure that you are not just leaving a legacy, but you're building a legacy to leave. And so, what will it mean? Next slide, please. What will it mean when we start talking about building out a legacy? And so this really is a roadmap, and I want you to make sure that when we're done, you get a chance to go visit our website, redworldwide.org. You'll find some amazing tools there. We've got a lot of free things, and so we want to make sure that you are aware that they're there for you to download, to take advantage of. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter, and then become a part of our community, because when you do, you get a lot of other tools and extra things that can help you in your quest for taking care of your family and making sure that you can do business better. And so with that, we're just going to jump right headlong here into why is it important to build a legacy. Next slide. So, what will it mean, to build a legacy? Well, when you have built the legacy, you will understand that you are creating growing, sustainable family values. That is one of the most important things that you can do as a mom, as a wife, as a sister, as a daughter. I have experienced things in my life that some of them were very challenging. I walked through my mother being sick with cancer and having to have the experience of living out that entire last season of her life, and understanding what it means to be position where you can, make a portion of your parents' life easier, give them something that um, only a child can give to them in that season of their life. The assurance that you're going to be okay, so that they feel comfortable about going home, And so it's kind of an interesting concept, but, I just remember some of the last conversations that I had with my mother. And I want to really talk about this today because I think that it's important for people to know, you don't wait until you get to be um, the elder stage of your life to make a plan. The plan needs to really start. And I heard someone say this when I was at a conference last week, that a plan should start when you're 18. Okay, really, because literally you could position yourself to, not just affect your family and the people who are in your immediate and I want to say immediate circle, but you can affect all of the onlookers, all of the people who are, you know, there to see what else is going on in your in stage of your life when you have made the plan and followed the plan through and experienced everything with regards to what would be considered wealth building and legacy building, from the very on stage of your early adulthood. And so, what I have to say about this is that, I mean, I wish I knew more. I tell people all the time, my father had all kinds of things that we didn't even know he had. Okay, he had stock. We knew about the savings bonds, but we didn't know about some of the other things that he had placed in his ledger, if I could call it that, so that we would have access to it when we got old enough to understand what to do with those things. And I've told this story many times, and I'm going to tell it again today. How when we were when I was ready to go to college, I thought I needed financial aid. And I came to find out that I didn't really need what I thought I needed because my parents had planned. They had made plans, and according to their plans, they liquidated some of the stock. And that cash became what they used to pay for my schooling, for my first degree. And which meant that I didn't have to use student loans. I didn't have to take advantage of grants because of the fact that, number one, I didn't qualify, and I didn't know I didn't qualify, but I didn't. But the other side of that is that my parents had planned, they put things in place, and as a result of what they put in place, I was able to go to school and enjoy my schooling without having a thought about what happens if my tuition's not paid, or being on academic probation, not necessarily academic, but financial probation while in school doing well academically. That wasn't my plight because there were things in place. And so when you take the time to plan out the legacy, to put together an estate plan, to make sure that your family members are in a position, you ensure are in position, I should say, you ensure long-term financial viability for your family. You are able to leave a stronger, more accessible, more valuable legacy. And so let's talk about that for a minute, because I think it's important for people to understand what it means when we're talking about having a more valuable legacy. When we are looking at things from the standpoint of value, we have to understand that this has everything to do with making sure that your family's wealth is preserved. Okay. And so when we say that it's preserved, that means that it's able to be used for its intended purpose. The best way that you can plan is to make sure that your family is secure and safe and everything is in its proper place long after you're gone. They are able to take advantage of the things that you've structured, and making sure that the planning that you've done can really expose your family to years and years of an amazing, comfortable life. And so one of the things that I can say, and I read this earlier in a pamphlet, that poor or no planning can expose your family to years of struggling with legal proceedings, unnecessary taxes, probate fees, and other things. Okay. The stress that goes along with it. And when you take the time to do the opposite of that, I mean, just simply plan, then you can, get the right things to the right people in the right time, in the right way. And so that's something that I want you to be thinking about. How do I get what it is that I have, amassed or put together, or what I am saving, whether it's, you have items that you consider family heirlooms and things that you want to make sure that are given to the right people in the family. Those things come with planning. You have to plan that out, and you have to put something together to make sure of, that they will get what it is that you have pre-planned for them. So let's go to the next slide. So why is it important? Why is it important for us to build a legacy? Well, when we build a legacy, it improves our efficacy and our efficiency in providing for our family. It increases our sustainable um, manner in which we are able to um, exist here, in the earth realm. Okay. And so when I'm talking about sustainability, I'm not necessarily just talking about living a long life, because longevity would be, increasing the longevity. When you build legacy, you can increase your longevity. You put things in place so that can live a longer and healthier and safer life. But the sustainability, it has more to do with how you build, what it is that you do, so that you can make sure that all of the things that are required are available, okay, when they are needed. Because longevity, you living longer, there's only so long that you can live in your human form. And so we want to be really clear about the fact that we are not necessarily talking about prolonging life, beyond what, it is, what is available. But we are talking about making sure that the life that we live has a, full and rich heritage, that there are valuable memories that you have put things in place that gives you the opportunity to extend the capacity of your wealth, so that you can extend your reach way into the future. And this is really an important part of the legacy building planning, is to make sure that whatever it is that you're doing, you're thinking about more than yourself. Okay. And so there's some, pillars that we're going to talk about in a minute that are a part of this, that really are going to make it a lot easier for you to move forward in your legacy building. But the first thing I want you to think about is, as a parent, and go to the next slide, please. As a parent and or grandparent, the thing that you want to be doing is leaving this legacy that you've built in a manner that is easy for people to access. Because leaving a great legacy is one of the most powerful things that you can do for your family. And when you position yourself so that you have done the necessary parts, created your estate plan, and, you know, determine and document how you want individuals to gain access to the estate that you have built up. Should you become incapacitated, or you pass away. It's very, very, very important that you're thinking about these things, and that it's not a morbid thing, but that it becomes a thing that is ultra important and is a part of your life and your livelihood. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So when we're thinking about it, I want you to understand it this way. When you leave a legacy, you ensure that you're taking into account the long-term perspective of every person in your family. And I really want you to resist the temptation to make these myopic decisions that are overly focused on what you can experience while you're alive. And I said this once when I was teaching in a very large audience, but I'm going to say it again today, that I have been in the presence of some people who are only concerned about themselves. And they will say things like, well, whatever happens with those rugrats when I'm gone, that's up to them, because I did what I was supposed to do while I was here. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of an interesting perspective, that you're not concerned about what happens when you're no longer here, because and when I say that, I know that nobody can take anything with them when they pass away, but leaving those items, that are sustainable, the wealth, the wealth of knowledge, okay, the family heirlooms, the things that you can do for your children, for your children's children, that helps to make things easier for them in life is really, I believe, something that we should do. And in the context of what it is that we're talking about today, I want you to be thinking about the fact that you're setting a precedence for others coming behind you. You're demonstrating to them what they should also be doing. And so when I'm sharing this information today, I'm very conscious of some of the choices that I have made and some of the choices that my husband and I are making even now. If I had known to do this, I would have started a lot sooner. But I think about the fact, and we were talking about this a couple of days ago, how my dad, when we were very young children, he began buying savings bonds, and those savings bonds were available to us at a point in time in which when we needed them. And then I think about the fact that, I didn't have any idea what that meant. He never taught us what those things meant. And so because of that, it was like, okay, this is great that we have these items, but, I didn't really know to make this something that I should put forth to my own children until many years after my kids were, of age. And so I will say to you that setting a precedence and making the knowledge available to your children and your children's children while you're doing it, creating some sort of a family journal or family ledger, something that they can actually go back to say, okay, these were the steps that mom took and dad took. These are the steps that this was the roadmap that they've left us, so that now we can prepare the legacy that we want to build for our children as well. Next slide, please. So when we're thinking about, these concepts, next slide. Okay, there we go. We want to be thinking about, some best practices. But before we do that, I want to just kind of run right back over why estate planning and legacy building really matters. Okay, so when you're thinking about protecting your loved ones, and I really want you to understand that there is a level of protection that is involved in this. The process of recognizing and administering, a document, that will be respected by the courts and understood. So when you are establishing your legacy, I've seen people do this. They say, well, I have a will, and I hate to, really explain this to you this way, but I've got to tell you that the whole concept of just having a will is not enough, because unfortunately, administering a will can be very costly. And emotionally, there could be a lot that goes into that because of probate. And so let's kind of talk about the whole concept of probate and what it is and how it works and why people, are really challenged by it. And I've mentioned probate before in some of our other teachings, and I'm going to mention it today because I don't know that we've done this in a way on so many different platforms at once. But when it comes to probate, this term is really, often misunderstood. But to put it very, very simply, it's a legal process which occurs after a person has passed away. And in probate, the court recognizes whether or not the last will and testament that a person has left is valid. They appoint a representative, for the estate of the person who has passed away. And then with that, they now begin to search out and pay debts, find other potential heirs. They will sometimes want to appraise the property and get valuations on all of the things that might be in the estate. And all of these things that they're doing, they are charging a fee for, of course, and not just the fees that they're paying to have these processes completed, but they are also charging a fee to the estate for doing this. So the court is validating the will, it's acknowledging its existence and its authenticity. The court is also officially appointing these people, the representative who has been potentially named in the will to oversee it, but they also have a probate attorney, and that person has to be paid. And they have all of these other fees and I would say, for the purpose of, just giving you the visual, sometimes the person could have a lot of debt that was incurred that may not have been something that had been thought through very well while they were alive, because if they had, they would have made a better plan and they could have paid those things off at their debt. But unfortunately, not having the ability to do so or the knowledge to do so, those debts have to be paid from what's in the estate. And then there's the tax returns. People don't think about the fact that there is a final return that most people have to have filled out at their death. So whoever has been placed in the position of the the executor of the estate, now their responsibility is to get those taxes done. Okay, and they have a time frame in which those taxes need to be done. And unfortunately, sometimes the taxes at the end of life can be quite exorbitant. And so when you go through probate with a will, okay, you may end up in a situation where there are a lot less assets than what you had expected for them to be in the estate, because those assets are chipped away at and chipped away at and chipped away at through probate, and people are not able to gain access to what it was that was intended initially. So even with a will, the probate process is going to still be time consuming, and often many times it's expensive, and due to the legal fees that go along with this, it can just make it a very costly and process. But it also is not private. Okay, it's a very public process, and so that's another reason why a person may not want to go down that street. And so the other options, and we'll talk about this in a minute. I know you're trying to probably figure out, well, she's telling us our best practices, but it doesn't sound like this is the best practice. I am just making sure you understand the why. Okay, before we talk about the best practices, let's talk about the why. So, when you're protecting your assets, you want to be thinking about safeguarding things, making sure that things are put away and put in a place where they are less likely to be affected by the fact that you are no longer here. And you can minimize your estate tax, the taxes that you'll have to pay after you are no longer here, that are paid from your estate, when you're able to have things in position, inside of a trust of sorts. When you have done proper estate planning, then it will minimize the federal and the state tax that you will pay at your after your passing. And then there's also the ability for you to establish guardians. If you are in a position where you have minor children and you pass away and your children are still minors, if you have your estate planning taken care of, that legacy planning that we're talking about, then you can make those appointments inside of a document that is respected by the courts. And then it's a quite an easier transfer of authority over your children when you have a document that is respected by the courts. And you can also make sure that your health care and financial, desires are stated inside of the estate planning documents. And then, of course, even you can make some decisions for your adult children who, are 18 or older, and things that you might have wanted for them to be able to take advantage of. You have that ability to take care of those things very easily when you leave them inside of an estate plan, a legacy plan. And so when we're talking about this today, we want you to be really clear that that long-term perspective that I talked about, this is how you begin to put those things together. So now let's look at these 5 best practices. So these 5 best practices we use, also for your business. Okay. When we are working with our clients who have businesses, we talk to them about enhancing their financial performance and increasing their growth potential and making sure they can, have more consistent and predictable revenue, having a Switzerland structure where they're not too dependent on any key person, any key employer, any key employee, any key customer, or any key supplier, and then we talk about them having their hub and spoke relationships managed where, they're not the only one, okay, that everything relies on, that people are able to understand, the processes, because they have left some standard operating procedures in place. They've put other people in place as well. So it makes it easy. Well, in the same way that we're talking about having best practices for our business, these same things work for you personally. When you are able to enhance your financial performance by putting certain things in place that will better, create opportunities for you to have consistent revenue, it infuses your estate plan, because now what you have available is different than, just the going to work and working a 9 to 5 and, having your W-2 income. There are things that you can do with W-2 income, things that you can do with your, as we call, your hustle money. Some people are working, their regular job, and then they have their side hustle, their, multi-level marketing program that they might be involved in, or maybe they have some other type of secondary income that's coming in. They might have an LLC, or they might be a sole proprietor and having something that they're doing. But I want you to understand that when you have a situation where you're able to put in place money while you sleep, and grab some money in hidden places even, to create an opportunity so that you can enhance your financial performance. And we'll talk about life insurance in a minute. But we do believe in having some investments and other types of income that can support your current financial day-to-day operations that you might have going on. All right. And then, of course, increasing your growth potential. And what this could mean for you is setting a trajectory so that you are constantly moving in a forward position, and even if barriers do appear, you keep moving forward because you are doing the things necessary to make sure that the financial revenue opportunities that are coming through, that these opportunities are continuing to move you in a position where you're constantly moving upward. I know of some people who they're always looking at, what we used to call get rich quick schemes. And so they will make some valiant moves with their finances, and then they'll take those funds and throw them into a situation where they don't understand the difference between risk capital and non-risk capital. So let's talk about that for a minute. When you understand that only a certain amount of the wealth and the finances that you are amassing can be utilized in the pursuit of maybe some other type of more risky, you know, endeavors, then it kind of helps to make sure that you don't have a fall off in your potential. Okay, your growth potential, like I said, should always be moving in a steady, upward pace. And unfortunately, when you're thinking about things from the standpoint of, okay, I've got, $1,000 came in, I'm going to take 800 of it and put it into something that you're not, quite sure how it could work. You don't have everything in place to make sure that it's going to be successful. And, you're leaving yourself in a position where you don't have enough reserves so that if something happens, you can, take care of it or cover it, and so you want to be careful to make sure that while you're increasing your growth potential, you're always making sure that you have a foundation of reserves in place so that you can have something to fall back on. And in creating more consistent and predictable revenue, this could mean, for you, that you are doing something that's going to be paying out every month the same amount or more, that is it's predictable revenue, recurring revenue. And so I talk about, some of the things that we use in the Value Builder program, which is where this information came from. We talk about having subscription services that we own, whether it's you have an app or whether you have some process or something that you sell that makes it so that you've got, some type of overrides and, different things that come back to you for those sales that you've made, over time. It's important that you are looking at life from this standpoint. How do I make sure that I can have consistent, predictable revenue, not just reoccurring revenue, but recurring revenue? And we have some other episodes where we talk a little bit more about the automatic customer, but today I want you to just be thinking about this in your family. What is that we can do in our family that's going to have predictable recurring revenue? That could be something that you're doing within your life insurance process, which is a part of your estate plan. And you could have, a policy that is a permanent policy that's growing over time, and it's going to have consistent revenue that is predictable. I mean, it may not be the same amount every month or the same amount every year that it's growing, but it could, be that it's growing at least at, a certain amount or above. And so you want to be thinking about that. And then, of course, the independencies that we talked about, not being too dependent on any key process, and that's the case within your legacy planning as well, making sure that you don't have these dependencies, that if something happens where the bond market goes bad, or we don't we end in a war, you are not in a situation where your family is completely and totally harmed. Okay, and so next slide, please. Okay, so as we're looking at this, how can we, I don't know if you heard me. Next slide, please. How can we continue in our process to make sure that our estate plan is doing what it's supposed to be doing? And this is really, really important. Okay, we have to know where to start. Well, the first thing that we have to do is to plan our estate. And so the way that we plan our estate is through our revocable trust first. And so we'll start here because we won't be able to complete this whole thing today, but I want to really give you this side of it because I want to make sure that you understand that it starts with creating what they call the Rev Trust or the revocable trust, the living trust. And you can do that together with your spouse or your registered domestic partner, or you can do it alone. But in any event, whatever you do, please do it, because in that particular document, it meets certain requirements that are put in place, by the federal government, and they are actually carried out through the probate court. These particular documents, the revocable living trust, gives you the ability to give out instructions that will allow for you to not have to go into probate. So your estate will not get stuck in probate when you have the right documents in place and they're prepared in the right way. Okay, so they need to not just be prepared, but sometimes your estate planning might have been done a long time ago, and you might have what they call an out of date plan. And so that in and of itself is almost as bad as not having a plan at all, because if the plan was not done in the right way, you could end up costing yourself a lot of money, and or costing your estate a lot of money, if you're no longer here. So you want to make sure that you've, taken the time to have your documents reviewed regularly. And I'm talking about annually is really a good practice. Okay. And you want to make sure that when you're doing that, that you have, fair allocations for your beneficiaries, that you don't have outdated fiduciaries. Some people don't pay attention to the people who they've made successors for their trust, the people that will take over if something happens to them, and they end up in a situation where those people themselves are no longer here either, and they're still in the document. And so we've got to make sure that we are doing the things necessary to make sure that our documents are well cared for, that we are, making the necessary arrangements to amend the trust when it needs to be amended and to keep it up to date. And then we need to create the pour over will. When you're creating the living trust, you got to make sure that that pour over will is done, because it catches everything that was, left, unaccounted for inside of the living trust. So let's say you prepared your living trust and you did it a long time ago, and now things have changed. The pour over will direct any probate assets to your revocable trust after your death, ensuring that all of your assets pass by way of your revocable trust. And so you got to make sure that you have that in place, and the pour over will is, done properly so that it can catch up anything that may have been, established after the revocable trust had been put in place. And then, of course, you want to create the living will as well. The living will is a healthcare directive, and it's in advance of anything happening to you, and it just grants the agents who you've listed powers to act on your behalf, but it also gives instructions to medical professionals. It's a directive so that they will know what it is that you wanted, what your desires were concerning your life preserving or prolonging care, whatever it is that you desired. And so that's why it's very important to make sure that's in place, and that it is also reviewed, just in case something that you desire changes, so you may have to make changes to the living will or establish a new one and replace the one that you might have desired for to be put in place previously. I recently had to do that. My husband and I, when we came together and did our documents or went over our documents, there were certain things that I had in there that changed for me. Some ideas about how I wanted, my end stages of life to be handled. And so in my early adult life, when my kids were in middle school and my youngest one was in elementary school, I had already done a living trust with a living will and a pour over will attached to it, and even my power of attorney. But those people who I had in the documents had changed. My trustees were no longer who the trustees were previously. And even in my durable power of attorney, some of my desires had changed, and what I wanted my agent to be able to do had even been expanded, because now my life is a lot different than it was when I was in my 30s. And so it's so important that you take the time to make sure that you are going over the documents, even after you have provided everything that you wanted in them. Before you notarize it, go over it again to just make sure it's what it is that you desired. And then, of course, when it's notarized, you can have the comfort to know that what your wishes are will be respected, okay? Because you now have a document that is a legal document with a certification that provides every third party that sees that you have done this process the assurance that these key things that you wanted done, and the people who you wanted to be in charge are in place to handle what it is that you have stated that you wanted handled. Now, you could also, in that um, uh, legacy plan, put also together a letter of wishes, which is literally a simple letter that kind of outlines your intent and your goals regarding the trust. These documents could be prepared by an attorney, or even by your estate planner, your estate professional. But, you don't necessarily have to have the letter of wishes designed by them. It could be something that you just put in a simple handwritten letter, to just say, okay, this is what I wanted. This is how I wanted it. And in case, you come across this letter after my demise, to please push these things forward. Okay. Next slide, please. So, in total, what we are saying today is that it's just really, a very important part of life for you to plan out your legacy. It is an ongoing process. This is not something that you do once and then you just put it away because you don't want to even think about your death. This is not just thinking about your death. This is thinking about, how do you want to live? How do you want to live in at every stage of your life? And what would you want to happen should something interrupt the flow of what you're doing now? And so these documents are urgent. Like I said, at 18, if somebody had told me at 18 I would have been doing it. I did it in my 20s, but in my 30s I solidified some things. But I will tell you that, in my early stages of life, I was always concerned about what I wanted for my kids to have and how I wanted things to be set up for them. And I put together some guardianship documents, and I didn't even know that they didn't have any legal standing at the time, but I was just doing what I knew to do. But when you learn how to position yourself so that you are in the mindset where you can be open enough to allow people to help you, you can really have a very streamlined and well prepared estate plan and legacy plan, for your family, for your children and your children's children. And you can designate properly the guardians for the minor children in there. You can make sure that potential incapacity or your medical decisions are made and handled properly. You can ensure that you have designated the beneficiaries and the people who you want to be the fiduciaries handling your funds and other assets in your end stage of life. You could also, utilize this to even create, charitable gifts for others, through your legacy plan. And so it's very important that you are clear, okay? Clear about the importance of this. Now, I have to say this at the very end because I think that this is important for you to know. The federal estate tax exemption, currently allows, for a historic high of over $12 million per individual to be given. Okay. And most of us who are on this line may not see that. Okay. We may not see that. In 2024, our exemption is at 13.6 mil, right? But by 2026, we're going to be at about half of that or less. And so if there is no legislative change, this is what they call the exemption sunset. This is going to happen. And so you need to be thinking about the fact that maybe right now you're not making a lot of money, or you may not even can conceive of having access to more than $12 million. But I will tell you this, as far as giving more than $12 million, I will tell you this: you don't know what's going to happen in your lifetime. And I know some very, very important people that we can put our eyes on today to say, man, they have this, their family has that. And, we shop inside of stores that have their names on it. And some of those people had no idea that they were going to grow out of business, or something was going to happen in their life where they would end up in a situation where they could give away $12 million. And so I am saying that, the sky is the limit for most of us in our lifetime. We, even where I'm sitting today, I had no idea at 20 that I'd be doing what I'm doing today, or for that matter, that I would have amassed some of the things that I have been able to amass in my life, and experience some of the things that I've been able to experience, or for that matter, that my family would have trusts, and that we would have the ability to weigh in on our grandchildren's futures, and our great grandchildren to come, their futures. So I am saying to you that wherever you are in life today, whatever stage you're in, it is never too early to plan. Build out your legacy, and build it out in a way that you are in expectancy of something to happen, that you cannot foresee right now, but that may become your express privilege to live. Okay. And with that said, I just, thank you for joining us today and being with us this entire time. We hope to see you again tomorrow here on Co-working Live with Red Worldwide.